Hello and welcome to lesson 3 of week 27. In this lesson, we're going to look at variables in stored procedure. My name is Mildred. In the last lesson, we created a stored procedure and we attempted to use the declare statement to create a variable and then to retrieve the value stored in that variable. Now, that was not the best example, so I'm going to show you what a variable is and how to use them. Now, for those of you who are just taking MySQL course, a variable is a named data object, and what we use it to do is to store value. The value of a variable can change during execution of a stored procedure. If you are coming from other programming language, the concept of variable is exactly the same. Now, in MySQL, what we use variable to do is to store values that will change frequently based on what is going to be supplied. So if we want to declare a variable inside a stored procedure, we use the declare statement like we saw in the last lesson, and I'm going to do just that. So let's say we want to create the customer rental stored procedure. Let's recreate it. So what I will now do is to drop what I had before. So I'll say drop procedure if exists, and I'm dropping the customer rental. Then I want to start. Recall that we use the delimiter first, and we declare a new delimiter, and then we create the procedure, and the procedure we want to create is customer rental. And then in the parentheses, I don't want to do it like I did it the last time in the previous lesson. I just want to have the in mode, and I want it to be the customer. So the user will supply an integer which we are going to call customer. Then we begin. So we're not going to have like the total rental here, but we're going to declare it as a variable, and I'll show you how. So there are many ways to do the same thing. You just have to know what works better and what is optimized for better performance. And so what I'll do here is to say begin, and after my begin statement, I want to declare a variable. So I'll say declare total rental like this, and it is an integer, and we want to have a default value, default of 0. What we want to do now is to select count, and we want to count the rental ID. So how many rental IDs exist for a customer? So select count rental ID. Where do we want to save the total rental ID? We want to save it in the total rental. So we'll say into total rental like this, and we're selecting this from the rental table where the user supplies the customer ID, which will be equal to what we defined as the parameter customer. So this is similar to the last lesson's example, except that now we declare total rental as a variable. It is not part of the parameter. The parameter or the argument that the calling method or the calling function is going to provide will just be the customer ID of the customer whose total rentals we want to calculate. And so once I do this, I'll break this so you can see everything. So once I do this, the next thing I want to do now is to say select total rental, just so that we can display the total rental when we do that. And then now I will end, and I use $2 sign for my delimiter, and I will declare the delimiter or redefine my delimiter to be back to semicolon. How do I call this? So let's run this to see if this is okay, and then we'll see how to call this. So this is basically like what we did in the last lesson, except that I am not using the total rental as an out mode in the parameter or as one of the arguments that the user should supply. I'm declaring it as a variable within the statement, and then at the end I'm selecting the total rental to be what I'm going to return when I call the customer rental stored procedure. And so when I run this, it is created. I want to comment this out, and then I'm going to use the call statement. So I want to call customer rental, and in the parentheses, let's say I want to call customer with the ID of 150. If all is well, I should just get the total rental for a customer whose ID is 150, and I have a total is 25. If I get the one of 33, I run, I get it as a total of 21. So this is how we use variables in stored procedure in MySQL. Now there are several other topics like how we handle errors in stored procedures, signal and signal statements. We have the if statements, we have the case statements, how to loop, use the leave statements. We have things like SQL cursor, stored functions, stored object access control. We have how to show errors and warnings, and we also have a topic, SQL triggers and indexes, and we're going to look at also MySQL Python, and we're going to look at this in the next 2 weeks. And in the last 2 weeks of the course, we're going to tie up everything into finalizing our software development project. This is where we end this lesson and this week. Thank you, and see you next week.